All right, so good morning. I'll just start out with some general comments. First of all, when you're president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, you lay out an agenda with your priorities, and then it's inevitable that sometime during the year an issue rises up that you weren't planning on. And this was our issue, this notion between law enforcement and community and how well they can work together. And I'm so proud of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, our relationship with the COPS office 20 years ago. We started with President Clinton, Tom Cochran, Jerry Abramson, and we came up with a program that was great for this country. You fast forward 20 years, here we are today. The president has a task force. I have two of the members with me on my left, and we're talking about a very important issue. It was all ignited by what took place on August 9th in Ferguson, and we responded. We met again in October in Little Rock as we celebrated the COPS program. I established a working group led by my mayor on my right from Gary, Indiana. She's done a great job. They've conversed on the telephone, they've met in person, and came up with a series of recommendations. And why is this important? Because our president's administration and task force wants to hear from mayors. They want us to have an opportunity to inform the final report that they give to the president on March 2nd. We had our final opportunity today as a host of mayors to receive a formal recommendation, but other mayors got a chance to ask questions. And I will tell you, from Commissioner Ramsey and Director Davis, for them to be here in real time to give us an opportunity to weigh in, it really means a great deal. So at this point in time, I'd love for my mayor to come up, share a little bit in terms of her recommendations, and I'd love for each of you to make a quick comment. Then we'll take some questions. We got an action-packed day, but this is an important issue for all of us. And Tom, thanks for creating a platform accordingly. So Mayor Freeman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are extremely pleased to provide this report to President Johnson, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with the body of mayors and police chiefs. And our message is really very simple, and that is that we believe that mayors are equipped to lead what has to be a community conversation about the relationship between police and the community, that this is not just a law enforcement issue, but this is an issue that involves the business community, that involves civic and social organizations, the faith community, and that involves every individual who lives on a block. We are pleased to be able to provide these recommendations to the Presidential Task Force. I was honored to be at the meeting on December 1st when the President announced, and there were two things that stood out to me. One was the sense of urgency that was communicated by President Obama, but the second was in appointing Chief Ramsey, or Commissioner Ramsey, and in appointing Professor Robinson, it was clear that this was a group that would be tasked with getting something done. The last thing I would say is that with every tragedy, and certainly we have seen tragedies across this country, there comes opportunity. And as mayors, we have to embrace this opportunity to create a dialogue that will serve our cities for generations to come. And it's not just a dialogue about public safety, it's a dialogue about race relations. It's a dialogue about poverty in our community. And it's a dialogue about how we as the general community engage with government in a way that it serves the community on days where the police have to be involved and on days when the police are not involved. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And as co-chair of the task force, I'd like to thank both Mayor Johnson as well as Mayor Freeman Wilson for putting together this very thoughtful document that we will be using to help us as we guide through the various issues that we're confronted with in today's environment. You know, it was already mentioned that the president has a sense of urgency. Nothing could be more true than that. We were given a very short timeline, March 2nd, to have a draft report on his desk. We will meet that timeline. but we're going to need the support of mayors, community, activists, everyone to help us accomplish that. And that's why we're having this series of listening sessions, so that we get the kind of information in that is concerned to various groups of individuals and incorporate all that into our final document. So again, thank you very much for being here, and thank you again, Mayor, for your hard work in putting this together. No, Ron Davis.
So, good morning. My name is Ron Davis. I'm the Director of the Department of Justice Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, better known as the COPS Office. I'm also serving as Executive Director for the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. So I'm here probably more for the questions about the administrative function of the task force, where we're heading, any questions you may have. But I do want to reinforce that I think by the COPS Office and the Department of Justice being tasked with supporting and providing the administrative support for the task force is also a message of where we're heading. That the idea of community policing is what we've been focusing on for this entire administration. We know that that is the framework for any kind of better community and police relationships. So that part we know. Now the question for the task force is how do we get there with real concrete recommendations. So for my office, it's a great honor to support the task force. It's a great honor for me to serve as the executive director for the task force. And I would just reinforce on behalf of the administration that this is a priority. It is a sense of urgency that not only is the COPS office supporting the task force, but the entire Department of Justice and the administration. So we're in constant contact with the White House, with the Department of Justice, all of its components. And so we are definitely committed to making that March 2nd deadline. And I guess that's my clue to stop talking. So.
That was right on cue.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please?
Got it.
The hotel has received an alarm and is investigating. The fire department has been notified and is responding. Please stand by for further instructions. Thank you. May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? The hotel has received an alarm and is investigating. The fire department has been notified and is responding. Please stand by for further instructions. Thank you.
Okay, so as we conclude, I want to thank, again, all the members here. I have my chief of police in Sacramento, Chief Summers. Thank you. Raise your hand. He's a part of our task force. And he brought our sheriff of Sacramento, Sheriff Jones, as well. So Sacramento's very well represented if you need some extra enforcement.
That's right.
Let me summarize it with this, and then we'll take a couple questions. You know, Ron Davis talked about earlier, we want to have an absence of crime and a presence of justice. In Sacramento, we've got to strike the balance, as in every city around the country, where you want crime to go down, but you want public engagement to go up. And that's what we're focused on doing. I'll tell you some of the input the mayors gave earlier on staffing. They want to hear about staffing and training and the resources that go with it. We want to talk a little bit about diversity. We talked a little bit about body cameras. We talked about school resource officers at the school site level, and then certainly how we improve communication. So those were some of the topics. The task force that you led and the working group was incredible. I'm going to give you the 6 areas real quick just so you have them, and then we'll open it up to a couple questions. 1, building police community trust. 2, improving police department practices. 3, assuring timely and accurate communication. 4, conducting independent investigations. 5, addressing racial and economic disparities. And lastly, providing national leadership. That's what the U.S. Conference of Mayors is doing. If any of the media has a couple questions, we'll be glad to address them. Please tell me your name, your affiliation, and I'll direct it to somebody up here. Cuz, we're cousins.
Well, thank you for the question. That's a big part of what we'll be discussing. I mean, as far as Ferguson, Cleveland, New York, that's already occurred. So we have to deal with the aftermath. But Chuck Wexler from PERF mentioned something yesterday during one of our discussions, and that is the importance of having that up front. having that trust, having those relationships before an incident takes place. It doesn't mean that there won't be controversy. It doesn't mean that there won't be issues. But at least people don't believe that there's unfairness taking place in terms of how justice is being applied. And that's really a big part of what we'll be focusing on. Thank you.
Just one thing I want to add, it's this issue of building community trust, especially between the police and the community, is not a new issue. Obviously, there's recent tragedies that highlight the need for it. I think you heard the president talking about simmering tensions. And I just want to bring to your attention that this has been a focus and a priority for this administration for the entire 6 years, going to the Attorney General's Smart on Crime initiative, looking at the COPS office as far as our hiring programs, our community policing efforts. So we've realized that from the beginning, trust is a key component to effective public safety. And so as we move forward, I think there's some cities we would recommend that they strongly look at establishing that trust now. Some are amidst crisis, and we have the capacity to go in. We have the Department of Justice COPS office, the Office of Justice Programs, but we also have the Community Relations Service that can go in and help with racial reconciliation and other services. So we do have the ability. It's not all is not lost if it is a crisis, there is a tense moment, but you need to start building relationships now. And I think that's the key message. And I also want to make the message that this topic, this idea of public safety and trust is a priority for the administration and has been for the beginning of since 2009.
The other thing that I would remind you of is that as mayors, we are not foreign to the concept of fighting fires or addressing crises and planning. We do it every day, and that's why we believe that we are especially poised to really lead the discussion and help in this regard.
All right, next question. Yes, name and affiliation.
John Buckmore, CareSpace.org. What's the role of foot patrols and bicycle patrols in community policing?
Well, those tactics are a part of it. Why? Because it puts you closer to the community. As you know, I'm police commissioner in Philadelphia, and all of our new recruits, for an example, start off on foot patrol. We have very active bike patrol out there. It puts people in closer touch. They become more familiar with their neighborhood and so forth. We aren't going to get into specific tactics and strategies, but we will talk about, in general, those kinds of things that will help you build relationships in a community. Because without relationships, the trust part is just simply not going to be achieved. You have to start with building actual relationships between people.
You know, the foot beat is actually something that is we went away from it years ago because we wanted to be efficient, and we found out that it created a void with us between ourselves and the community. So it's something that we're going back. It's not like inventing a new wheel, but it's very important. So we have officers now that are getting out doing the foot beat, and it's received very well in the community, and it gets you that communication. It's not enforcement related. It's more of the contact of getting to know who folks are. It's also about having that stability. When you get foot beats or bikes, normally they're going to be on that beat longer. So it gives them that opportunity to establish those relationships, and that's what it's about when you're serving the community.
One quick thing Chief Summers reminded me of. It's not just a feel-good strategy. We actually had Temple University conduct a study in Philadelphia of our foot patrol, where they identified locations where crime was occurring in open space and foot patrol could be an effective strategy. We had a control area where we didn't have the foot patrol, and then we had several areas where we did. There was a 22% reduction in crime in the areas where we had foot patrol. So not only did we build stronger relationships between police and those communities, we actually had a real impact on crime. That study is available. Temple University conducted it about 4 years ago.
All right, we're going to take one last question. Last two questions. No. Ladies first. Ladies first. Your name and affiliation first.
Alice Olstein with Think Progress. Asking about the recommendation related to monitoring social media. What sorts of posts would raise a red flag, and how do you balance concerns about privacy and surveillance?
Is that from your task force work?
Well, when you talk about social media, you're putting it out there, so there is no expectation of privacy. And certainly, we understand the First Amendment, And everything that we talk about relative to policing has to be constitutional, but at the same time, we have to enhance and encourage that the police use all of the tools that are available to them. And what we have seen, particularly in the last 2 to 3 years, is that there are pictures, there are incidents, there are all kinds of depictions on social media that have led to investigations and resulted in arrests and prosecutions. And so if you put it out there, then it's fair game. But at the same time, we are not trying to squash free speech and certainly discourage it, but we're using all of the tools that are available.
So for the, on behalf of the task force, if we go to Cincinnati, January 30th and 31st, and actually January 31st, there will be a panel. One of the topics is technology and social media. But let me just remind you what the president asked for the task force, and that was the concrete recommendations to build trust while ensuring that crime rates are still going on that downward trajectory. So the questions that we would hope that will come out of it and the things that we're looking for in developing that panel is how do you use social media to engage the youth, to build the trust, to start a new constituency, to get information out, to talk about the branding of an organization, to get people to want to become police officers, plus a new generation. So we know there's always an investigative and a crime-fighting tactic, but I think for the task force, the priority is going to be more about how to use technology and social media to build trust and to reduce the need to have things like use of force and other, controversial issues. Just want to clarify that.
This comes on every time you start talking. All right, you get the last question. Your name, affiliation.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? The hotel has received an alarm and is investigating. The fire department has been notified and is responding. Please stand by for further instructions. May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? The hotel has received an alarm and is investigating. The fire department has been notified and is responding. Please stand by for further instructions. Thank you.
I just want to say the fire happened 2 days ago, so this is a recording that came off from 2 days that's still going on.
We didn't even have an alarm. We just saw the smoke.
All right, go ahead. Your question and affiliation.
Wesley Lark, Washington Post. When we look down this list of things, staffing and training, diversity, school resource officers, body cameras, all of those things have price tags associated with them. As you talked, some of the mayors in that room, other mayors I've talked to, talked a lot about the idea of what kind of federal money might be needed along with these recommendations to make these things happen in these cities. What is that an issue as you talk to other mayors, you all have spoken and gathered feedback, the idea of needing some money and some resources for this, and how is that going to factor into how the task force gives its recommendations to the president? Will there be some type of price tag attached to it when that is done?
Certainly, when you talk about equipment, when you talk about some of the aspects of the recommendations, there is money associated with them. But more often than not, when you go down that list, there are things that are already in existence, the training from the COPS office, the training from other Department of Justice agencies, the best practices that have been outlined by various associations and trade organizations that we can avail ourselves of. As an example, our police chief is here from Gary, Larry McKinley, and we have been working for the last 2 years with the Office of Justice Programs Diagnostic Center, something that has been in existence over the last 2 years. They've provided tremendous technical assistance to us, and it has not come at a cost to Gary or at an additional cost to the federal government. And so part of our job, I think, is to make mayors aware of what exists. And, I say this tongue in cheek, but the greatest opportunity here for me at the U.S. Conference of Mayors isn't to ask the federal government for money or to receive new opportunities to get money. It's really to see what assistance, what support is available that I don't have to pay for that is already in existence.
So 2 things with that, to the mayor's point. So one is making sure that we always educate and inform Congress about our existing programs that the mayor talked about. And the other is the president has introduced a $263 million community policing initiative bill, if you recall. And a part of that, for example, is advanced community policing training. It advances a program that we have at the COPS office on collaborative reform. $75 million is identified for body camera, but not just the purchase of the equipment, but developing and understanding best practices. So that would be the initial package that the president has already submitted. Obviously, we just got appropriations for our 15th fiscal year, and in that, for example, at the COPS office, we will be able to continue our collaborative reform, our hiring grants, the technical assistance that the mayor's talking about, where we're providing technical assistance from Ferguson to Seattle to New Orleans. We're doing collaborative reform in Baltimore, St. Louis County, just finished Las Vegas and others, Philadelphia. So, I mean, a part of it is existing, but also the president did lay out that initiative. Okay.
Okay, everybody, that concludes. Again, we have an unbelievable task force that the president has put together. I have my chief here, our sheriff, and Tom Cochran, and our mayor, and our task force. So again, thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to share.